Well, with artificial intelligence being a growing part of our lives, both in personal and in business, many questions are being asked about areas like productivity growth and just how much of an impact we will see from this area in the future. A new report out by the Penn Wharton Budget Model takes a deeper dive into these questions. And pleasure to be joined once again by Kent Smetters, who is faculty director of the Penn Wharton Budget Model. He's also professor of business economics and public policy here at the Wharton School. Hi, Kent. How are you today?
Good and great to be back.
Thank you. All right. So let's start with just how important you think it is to project this productivity path, especially with how AI and technology are having such a greater role.
Yeah, absolutely. And you really see that with market concentration right now. The bottom 493rd firms, as the Apollo chief economist Thornton Stock is documented, their earnings projections they really haven't changed. But it's almost all the market's driven by these seven firms, the Magnificent Seven, and that's mostly an AI play. And so AI is having a very big kind of salient, impact. The real question is how broad is it going to be across the economy, and then really can AI help deal with this major debt problem that we have of growing debt? And that was the big motivation. So what we basically did is we looked at a bunch of different occupation groups and really based on other experts and their insights about the actual data and how to interpret things, and everything from office administrative support functions, the business and financial operations, computer and math occupations. Those are the ones who are most likely to be greatest impact by AI. And then all the way down to like farming, fishing, construction, and so forth, buildings and groundskeeping. Those are the occupations that are the least likely to be impacted. And so then the big question is, how much impact will this have in the macro economy? And then how much impact could this potentially have on government revenue? And then ultimately, potentially even the government debt over time. And there's been, this belief by policymakers that we're in this new era that AI, we don't have to be fiscally responsible because AI is going to solve everything. And what we're showing is that that's simply not true. We're not even nearly, that's not even close. And so they're making a lot of, incorrect assumptions about the impact of AI. But even with those incorrect assumptions, they're not then mapping to the budget deficit problem correctly.
Can you start to estimate then with so many businesses bringing AI on board, and I think the expectation that many others will, just how much of our GDP will be impacted by AI?
Yeah, it's not a small amount. So if you just look at the metric of jobs that at least 50% of the task, and so we have this task-based model that is very similar to Daron Acemoglu, recent Nobel Prize winner in economics. His task-based model that he used for modeling AI, we get bigger results than he got for the impact of AI. But nonetheless, if you break it down literally at the task level within each these occupational groups, basically about 40% of occupations, or at least based on the employment in those occupations, are going to have at least 50% of their tasks that will be essentially replaceable in the future by AI. So it's not a small impact by any measure. The primary author on this report is the supervisor of this report, Alex Arnon. I think he put it really well to recently. He says it's roughly the impact of email. In
Wow.
particular, email
Wow.
definitely had a big impact,
Yeah.
but it's not. And if you look across the occupations, lots of occupations, email-like technology, definitely had an impact. We used email this morning to communicate before this. And so, but at the same time, it's not one of those things that's like this magic bullet either. It's not electricity. It's not refrigeration. It's not that transformative.
And so because of that, is there an element of, as AI comes in and the level of productivity that we see grow in the years ahead, that it becomes to a degree kind of a known quantity just how much we're going to see the growth occur because companies are going to add it, and the technologies will change as we move forward. But once you install that technology, I think the expectation is you're going to do your job faster, you're going to have better productivity, but it's not going to markedly change year to year. You're going to kind of reach a level and continue to grow maybe incrementally.
Yeah, that's right. And so almost like it's one of the things that we did in the study is we looked at adoption of past technologies, those kind of growth curves, and rather fascinating. And we're talking about really the technologies as opposed to things that like the invention of the transistor or refrigeration, these general purpose big jumps that have much bigger impacts. And if you look at these adoption curves of technology and everything from the personal computer to the smartphone to the internet to cloud computing, rather shockingly, their adoption curve are very similar to each other, where you get this what kind of we'll call turnpike theorem like stuff with pretty quick adoption, but you can only go so far. 100% is the upper bound. And so many occupations are going to be way less than that. Some occupations are going to be quite a bit more than that, than 50%. We have office administrative support functions at 75%. Their tasks will eventually be replaceable by AI. Whereas building and grounds cleaning and maintenance operation, we said it's about 2.6%. And we literally, if people are curious, broken it down by over 700 different occupations. And then we summarize it in big occupational groups. But I think it is the case that you have quick adoption like you do with internet and other technologies. But then, yes, you get this leveling effect. As a result of that, what we find is that during the first decade, it will increase GDP by about 1.5%. By within 30 years, maybe 3% in the long run. By 2075, maybe 3.7%. So you're getting this leveling effect. Now everybody's been happy with this. It's bigger than some results, although we're kind of the first to kind of map it into this kind of this type of change. But nonetheless, it is especially with the budget issues. But nonetheless, it is bigger than some estimates, but definitely smaller than the rhetoric that we are hearing about AI.
And so what kind of impact might you see play out with the federal budget as we move forward here in the next couple
and
of
this
decades?
one is very much a work in progress because the first step was on productivity, more generally speaking, and then GDP and wages, wage growth, and so forth. The reason why it's harder to map it back to the budget is that we have to go category by category. So think about healthcare. Healthcare can actually be improved by AI for certain things like scans and reading scans. I call it the TSA effect. When you go to the airport, you don't have 50 people at the the TSA line looking at your bags. It only takes a couple of people because we have very modern scanners right now. And so you can imagine some innovations, especially for diagnostics, reading, and so forth. But at the same time, in healthcare, it's going to AI overall is going to increase costs simply because it's going to allow us to cure more things, and that's a good thing. But there's costs, and so overall, what we're finding for the first decade, I would call this maybe upper boundish, maybe about $400 billion in deficit reduction through expanded tax base. But that's a really rough first cut of all this, and we're going to be looking at it going forward.
Kent, great to talk to you as always. Thanks, sir.
Pleasure, sir.
Thank you. Kent Smetters, faculty director of the Penn Wharton Budget Model and also professor of business economics and public policy here at the Wharton School.